Hey guys, this is Anmol. Welcome back to my channel. And today we're going to learn about A to Z of JSON, which is JavaScript object notation, which we know for a fact is very important whenever we are dealing with any programming language. So let's get started with it. So what is JSON? So as I told, JSON stands for JavaScript object notation. It is a very lightweight format for storing and transporting data. It is often used even in RPA as well as other programming language, and it holds a lot of similarity with JavaScript. So in the name itself, it has JavaScript object notation. So JSON is often used whenever data is sent from a server to a web page, and it is easy for machines to parse and generate. And it is even easy for us to understand whenever we're writing JSON or kind of reading it. So JSON basically is built on two structures. Usually it is a collection of name value pairs, and in various language, you can treat it as an object record, or you can treat it as a dictionary. Even in RPA, we know that we have this thing named config file, the thing that, it's kind of very important, and we store all the configurable values in the config file. So if you think that even is a JSON thing, because it's a key value pair. We treat it as a dictionary, which is the key value pair. So the first column that we have is a key, and the second column that we have holds its values. So that is nothing but a JSON. And even for APIs, whenever we use HTTP request activity or even orchestrator request activities, the response that we get, usually it is in the form of JSON. And JSON is self-describing. We need not to, put in a lot of effort to understand what does it contains. It is pretty descriptive. We have the key that indicates what is the value the other thing would be holding. And it is very easy to understand. Last but not the least, it integrates easily with most of the language. So they are like universal data structures, and all modern programming languages support them in one form or the other. It makes sense that a data format that is interchangeable with programming language is actually based on these structures only. So moving further, so now, of course, you would have a clear idea of what is JSON and why it is so much in use and why it is supported by so many programming language, because it is very lightweight, it is very easy to understand and parse, and it is very commonly used because it is self-describing. So what are the JSON syntax rules? It's very simple, and that is why it is, so easy to understand and interpret. So always data is in the form of name value pairs. As I said, there would be a key and there would be a value to it. So that is why it becomes very easy for us to interpret and understand. And data is usually separated by commas. So wherever you see, if it goes on, the key value pair goes on going. So each of the key value pair is separated by comma. And whenever we reach to the last key value pair, there we omit the comma, because that means now it's the end. Curly braces hold objects. So wherever you see curly braces, which means it is holding objects, because JSON is capable of holding a lot many data types. It also holds object as well as it also holds arrays. So square brackets, whenever you see square brackets, it means it is holding arrays. And wherever you see curly braces, it means it is holding objects. So, and it's just not restricted to holding objects or arrays. It also holds strings, then double, then even the null values. So these all are the possible types. JSON can hold strings, Anmol, hello world. So anything that is written in double quotes is a string. So it holds strings. Then it even holds number. So the number could be the normal number, it could be decimal, it could be exponential number, it could even be a negative number. And a thing to note here is numbers are not surrounded by quotes in JSON. You simply write the number, you need not to surround it with quotes. The time you surround it with quotes, it changes to string. Then it also holds Boolean values, which is true and false. Surprisingly, it also holds null value. So you can simply write null for any key that you do not want that key to have any value. You can simply write null. Then it holds arrays. So the square brackets are indicative of that the first one is an array of number, and the first one is an array of number, which is having value 1, 2, 3. And the second one is an array of string. And now curly braces here indicate that it also holds object. So this is a key, this is a value. Name is the key, and that would actually tell that the value is gonna hold a name, which is Anmol over here. So these are the JSON types that it can hold all these values. And now array can also be of a Boolean array, a floating array, a exponential array, a string array, and so on and so forth. Now, these are some samples of JSON in a file. So sample one simply has a key value pair, the value being the string, and you can see it is separated by commas. The last one need not to have a comma. If it's a part of the entire thing, so you can omit the comma for the last one. I think by mistake I've added it here. And see the sample two, the first two keys are normal, holding name and the age, whereas the third key is an array of string holding travel and swimming as the hobbies. So we know that array can hold multiple values of the same data type. So travel and swimming being the same data type, which is string, and it is holding both of it. Now, some more example to make it a bit complex is that name is there, age is there, voter is Boolean, and then we have an array of string. And then inside that we have an object. Okay. So you can see here we have these braces, and then we have a curly braces indicating object, which means now this particular thing can even have the same set of key value pair that was there. So it has name, age, is voter, and hobbies. So it is actually, you can say this JSON started, then there's an object, and inside that object, again, there's an array, and inside that particular object, you can again have more objects. So it is actually called nesting. Okay, so you're having a lot of nesting inside it, object inside object or arrays inside arrays. So that is how you can actually treat a very complex data in a very beautiful structured way, which is easy for you to parse, as well as it is easy for the compiler also to understand, and it can be used interchangeably with many programming language. Now converting a JSON text to a JavaScript object so that you can actually get things out of it. Using the key, you can get the value. Okay, so this is like, why do we use JSON? So basically, JSON format is syntactically similar to the code for creating JavaScript objects. If you have a bit of understanding about JavaScript object, it is kind of very similar to it. And since the format is text only, so you can see whether it is key or whether it is value. The format is kind of text only. So that is why JSON data can easily be sent between computers and could be used across multiple programming language. Now, JavaScript actually has a built-in function for converting JSON strings into JavaScript object. Okay, and for that we have JSON.parse. So that's a built-in function of JavaScript. So we have JSON.parse that actually converts string to JavaScript objects. If the same thing we have to achieve in RPA, we have a built-in activity named Deserialized JSON. So Deserialized JSON actually does the same thing. It converts the string to JavaScript object. So that with the help of key, we can actually retrieve the values. We do not have to worry if it's becoming a little confusing, because we're going to see the practical implementation as well. Now, the exact opposite thing, if you want to convert an object into a JSON string, for that there is a built-in function named stringify that converts exact opposite thing of what the parse does. It converts an object into a JSON string, which is actually now serializing it. Okay, so for that we had an activity, but I think now it's not there. We'll go to UiPath Studio and check how to actually use all of that activities. And whenever we come across any such scenario, what is that we should be doing? So here we are. If you actually want to use deserialize JSON or deserialize JSON array, which is actually parsing the data, you need to have this particular package installed, which is uipath.webapi.activities. Okay, so if you want all of this, so you need to have this particular package installed, because this actually deals with JSON, REST, SOAP, and XML. Even JSON and XML are also somewhat similar. There are not much difference in it. It is somewhat similar. So you need to have this particular package installed. All you have to go is go on all packages, search for web API package. You'll get this thing here. You'll have to click on install and click on save. As of now, for me, it is already installed. So I am getting an option of uninstall. If you haven't installed it, you'll get an option of installing and saving it. Now, once you're done doing that, you can come to the activity package and search for serialize, okay, or deserialize. So you get here, see, deserialized JSON is here. And then similarly, if you, okay, so you get it here, see, deserialized JSON and deserialized JSON array. If you hover over it, you'll see it deserializes the JSON string to JavaScript object. And this deserializes the JSON array string to a JavaScript object. JavaScript like array object, okay. Now, you must have seen, reading the config. So there's this inbuilt activity named inbuilt workflow with RE framework named init all settings. It does the exact same thing that you're able to access all across your all across your program. You're simply able to access the thing like this. So you write in config, and then in the bracket, you mention the key name. So suppose you have said process name, and you do .toString, and you are actually able to fetch its value. Okay, so that is nothing but it's a type of JSON only being treated as a key value pair. Now, I have a sample JSON string. If you see, I have a sample JSON string. So here it is. You can see it is a bit of complex. We have a squad name, we have hometown, we have formed, we have secret base, we have active, which is a Boolean thing. Formed is a numeral thing, so it is not surrounded by quotes. Then inside that, we have an array of members. Okay, so it is actually an object because you can see the square brackets. Okay, it is actually an object. Whereas this, so it is actually an object, the member thing, because we have a square bracket. Okay, I think I'm confusing a bit. This is actually an array having objects inside it. So this is index 1. Then we again have index 2. Then we again have index 3. Okay, so it is an array of objects. Okay, it is an array of objects. And this particular object again has the same thing, name, age, secret identity, and then powers inside it, which is again an array because it is surrounded by square brackets. So now this particular entire structure is a bit of complex, but it has been simplified because it is a JSON string. The time we convert it to JSON object, it would be more simplified for us to access any of the property. Okay. So we'll see that how. Now suppose we wanted to access this damage resistance. Okay. Which is this is the first member, this is the second member. So we want to access the second power of the second member. The second member name is Madam Uppercut, and the second power of Madam Uppercut is damage resistance. So you can see the level of nesting they have achieved. And now for us to actually fetch this value very easily with just a single line of code, we'll have to convert it to JavaScript object because it is a Java string as of now. And now that I told you that you actually have to separate it with commas, okay, but when you have reached the last, you can say value, you need not to separate it with comma. Okay, now so for converting it to JSON object, we need to have a string, and for us to have a string, we'll have to read this particular text file so that we have a JSON string. So we'll read this particular file, we'll store its value in, say, JSON string. Okay, a variable with the same name already exists, so we're going to use the same name, JSON string. Now we're going to go with deserialized JSON. We'll pass that particular string of ours and take the output in our J object. Okay, now that we have this particular object, one thing is that we go on looping and we get the value that we want to. The other thing is, without looping also, we can get the value that we want. Okay, now that we know that we have to get the power of the second member, okay, which is Madam Uppercut. And for Madam Uppercut also, we want the second power of Madam Uppercut. So I'm going to just put a debugger here so that we can see everything in the immediate pane, and we'll run this thing in debug mode. Okay, so we have a J object. Okay, so we'll write J object, we'll write dot item. Okay, the first thing that we want to have is squad name. Okay, okay, so it says null, which means let's just go and see what is the key name. Okay, so it's capital N. We'll go again, we'll make it capital N, and we've got superhero squad. Okay, it is in the form of, not in the form of string, so we'll just make it to string, and we've got it in strings. Now in this superhero squad, we have members, and we want to go to this particular member. So we know that the indexing starts from 0, so this becomes 0 and this would become 1. So we want to go to the first member. Okay, so it's like J object dot item, we'll go to members. Okay, and we'll go to the first member. Okay, so now if you just press enter here, we'll get everything for Madam Uppercut, and we see that in Madam Uppercut there is a JSON array named powers. Okay, so once we have reached to Madam Uppercut, we're gonna say now we want to go to powers, and we want to fetch the second power of Madam Uppercut, which is damage resistance. Okay, so we want to fetch the second power. We know that the indexing starts from 0, so million ton punch becomes 0th index and damage resistance becomes the first index. So we're gonna say first index dot toString, and we've got damage resistance. Similarly, say we wanted to know the age of eternal frame, which is the last member. Okay, so we'll simply go on, we'll say members, and we know the last member is 0, and we wanted to know the age. So we'll simply say age, we'll remove 1, and we've got the age of that particular member. Let's press enter. So we've got the age. So this is how easy it is to actually deserialize and get the data out of JSON string. And it is just not useful here whenever you're dealing with any APIs. Okay, it is even very useful there. So suppose I want to call a particular API. Okay, let me get some sample API. So this is an endpoint that we've got. We know that it is a get API. So we'll make the request method as get. We'll accept the response as JSON, and let's preview it. So it has returned the record. Okay, so we'll simply gonna click on OK, and we would store its content in API content. And whenever you're calling an API, majority of the time its response is in JSON format only. Now that you know how to deserialize JSON and get the exact data out of it, so it would be very easy for you to get whatever data you want. So simply we're gonna store its API content into a file named, say, api.txt, and let's run this thing. Okay, so let's go and simply run this thing. And we'll see its format, its data would be extracted here. This is okay because the error was somewhere else. Before that, our execution would have stopped. So we have an API file here that actually has the entire data. So now you actually see it in the form of, it's a bit clumsy because it is written as a string and not as a JSON object. But if you want to write it as a JSON object, all that you have to do here is you're gonna deserialize it. So we're gonna deserialize the API content. Okay, and then we're gonna write that API content. Okay, so here we go. And so we've deserialized the API content into J object. And now we're gonna write that J object, we'll convert it to string, and we're gonna write that thing here. Now, if we run this particular thing, we'll see the difference between the two. Okay, so execution has stopped. Let's go back and let's open this API thing. Now you can see it is all formatted. Now, if your automation demands that out of the API response, only get the region out of it and use it further. So now you know how to exactly get the region out of it. It has now become very easy for you because you know how to treat the keys and to get the value out of it. So this is how JSON makes a life easy. And this is all that you have to know about using JSON in your RPA project. So thanks for watching the video. If you have any questions, you can drop it in the comment section below and I will address it. See you in the next video. Till then, stay tuned and happy learning.